So we have the SEC Growth ModelOps staff meeting for April 27th, unless you're in APAC, then it's April 28th. News and events. I suggest reading, if you haven't yet, the eGroup offsite recap. And I don't see Mon here. It was a carry course, but I noted the AI mentioned specifically, so it's pretty cool. Since we're going to put this on unfiltered, we probably won't go into details on that. But any impressions from it that we can say publicly? And if not, we can pause the recording and talk about items privately if anybody would like to. It was a good read. I learned some things. All right, sounds like no. Olivia, you're up next.
I wanted to share that it's a bit out of time, but all time flies here. So I'll be on parental leave from September to November. The exact dates are still not defined, but this is for baby number 2. I shared the Slack message on the social channel. Feel free to jump. I haven't yet revealed the gender, so you can still participate to the poll. I want to say there's a trap. Apparently, there's a trap. Anyway, Tatiana will be the acting EM when I am away, and I will be creating an issue also to detail the different responsibilities. Yeah, also will be away most of June for hopefully completing the roof renovation of the house before baby arrive. Like to.
Congratulations, Olivia.
Thanks. The second one is a bit less funny announcement. If in case you missed it, Nicole's last day is May 6th. Someone has been designated as the acting PM for composition analysis. So feel free to ping him if you have any question product-wise for composition analysis. And moving on to big rock and issues with tests.
Yeah, so organizing the monthly retro, I've noticed that participation is very light, not just on the bubbled up one, but also at the individual group level. So curious what teams are doing. I think Ross, maybe static analysis is now rotating. Is it the engineers to host it? I don't know if that's helping participation or if anyone has other ideas on how to increase participation.
It did increase participation for at least 1 month. Then the next month fell off. Maybe other reasons for that, but yeah, I think switching that up can help possibly.
And Thomas, you had some notes about timing on this.
Yeah, and I will admit to indexing on the the section wide retro rather than thinking about groups. So we've had, I mean, if you look at the participation in the section weekly, which is 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, on Wednesdays, participation has been dwindling for a while. I'm wondering I'm wondering if we need to, so there's one aspect of this. Not everybody was done. Do we need to re-articulate? So, okay, apologies. There were conversations with my kids going on outside and it's distracted me. Do we need the first aspect of this? I mean, not every group had done retros by the time we were announcing we were doing a section wide retro. Do we need to start articulating deadlines monthly on when groups should be done? And so.
Yeah, so we covered this actually last month as well in the section retro. And I proposed that groups should do that. I have notes actually. I think I already jotted this down on bullet 3, the eyes. But if we do those like between the 17th and 22nd, I know that's kind of on the tail end of the milestone, but it's also after development is complete. We've already passed our merge deadline, things like that. So I feel like that's a pertinent time to start having those discussions. Things are fresh in your mind versus waiting a week and a half later. And that gives us more time for the section wide. That can happen, more regularly around the 22nd. I know it varies, but I've said the week that the 23rd or 25th falls on, like this week. Would groups be open to moving those forward? I think that would be, I think Thread Insights happened this week, but I pushed ours back because I was caught off guard last week. It was Tuesday. I was like, I'm not ready. But I know CA did theirs today, and I think SAS did theirs today as well. Would your teams be open to moving that a week earlier? Like, any concerns?
Not from us. Since you're in my team, you would know that.
Yeah, and like I said, I messed up. Although container security, I think we want to move that earlier a week as well, because that happened today and yesterday. And I guess I think back to my point, I think we are, and maybe this goes into the participation, is I think it's also poorly timed, is we've already started the milestone, we're in the thick of it, and then we all get that email saying, hey, please contribute topics. I feel like there's 2 weeks before that, we could have probably started thinking about topics that are more applicable. Because I think a lot of our issues stem with like lack of planning, organization, just setting up that milestone. So a lot of it's obviously through the motions too, but we are missing that early part. Cool. I think I just said this, but sorry, point 4. So the async issues get generated on the 26th. I'm thinking about proposing we move that up. I'm not sure what I think I put the 17th on here. Just also that feels late. I'm not sure where the 26th came from, but to me, it feels like it should be like the 23rd or earlier if possible. Does anyone have history on why the async issues are created then?
Yeah, we'd have to ask Sean McGivern. I think he was the one who set it up originally. I think it's so that you don't end up with 2 retrospectives open at the same time. I think it's something around that. I can look at the schedules we have in place, but I think the last update happens before the 26th. So we try and conclude the first one before we open the next one, something along those lines. You would need changes to async retrospectives if you were to create the next retrospective earlier.
Yeah,
So
I would probably
not that it
ask
can't be
for
done.
help on that.
We just need to look. Yeah,
it's a group decision for sure. And that's a strong point about having multiple issues and causing confusion, unnecessary confusion. Phil, I'll work with you on that if that sounds good. We kind of ping the right group that might have stronger opinions.
well, look, let's just create an issue.
Yeah, we can start the conversation through an issue. Sorry, I think I skipped a topic. Yeah, go ahead, Olivier.
About the reasoning behind this skill is tied to the product development timeline. I was looking for the reference in the handbook, but this might be more flexible today, but in the past, it used to be tied to the release cycle, meaning after the 22nd, we're done with the official release, and then we kicks off the retrospective. There was some processes company-wide about creating the issues, the document, feeding it, etc. But as we moved down the retrospectives to smaller groups, section, etc., we were able to do that ahead of time because we had to do that ahead of time so that we were ready for feeding the company-wide one. So we're basically free to do that wherever we want so that we are ready in time for the section-wide, I'd say. What we've experienced in composition analysis is that starting before the 20-ish or 19 is not worth it because people are just so busy completing the tasks for the milestone, closing issues, cleaning up labels and stuff like that. Particularly in the analyzers team, we are a bit lucky, and maybe we abuse about that advantage, is that we can still complete issue after the 17th because we are a very fast release process where we can deploy immediately a change. So up until the 22nd, we can still close the issues from the previous milestone. But that's more an exception than a usual process, I'd say. So that's why in this composition it is, we put it on the 22nd. We have a recurring meeting on every month happening on the 22nd, and depending on which day it ends up happening, we move it slightly to a better fitting moment.
think there's two more areas within this subject. One was using the section wide meeting for the section wide retro. Thomas, you mentioned this to me earlier that you were thinking if we move that earlier an hour. Could you speak to that in the logic?
Logic is that it's too late for EMEA. We're missing a whole swath of folks. So we'd like to try to move it up an hour just to be more inclusive.
Should we apply that to the weekly as well?
I think
Just the whole shebang?
I think we do it as an experiment for one, see if it helps drives additional participation. And if it does, then we consider just moving it permanently.
I've added a note in here. You know, for our growth teams, we hardly ever saw anything that needed to bubble up from the group level to the section or the old company retrospectives. And I've put a link to the release post retrospectives they have. These are the best retros I've seen at GitLab so far, but they're really heavily driven. You know, Farnoosh tends to drive them. Pretty much every comment thread turns into an action item with an owner that turns into either a handbook MR or an issue that's followed up on and discussed in the subsequent retro. If you're looking for improvements to your group retros, I think you could take some ideas from there.
Sam and Ross, do you attend the retros? Do you find them to be useful? Just curious from your perspective as engineers. You came to the meeting, so I get to ask you questions.
A sync retro?
And you feel free to say, I'm not sure, I don't know. That's totally fine too.
I don't think we have a sync retro.
You're not doing a sync retro on your teams, Sam?
No, I don't, not that I recall. As far as I know, we did them fully async.
Ross, how about you?
Well, I suppose context matters here. So like the static analysis ones, we've got some value in those. I've never attended the sec or secure level since it got broken out to static analysis. So whatever Thomas or whoever bubbles up, I just trust them to do it right. So I don't go to those. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but
it is. Thank you. Neil, looks like you have some other thoughts before we move on to the next topic.
Yeah, so I did the release post tech advisor role a few months ago. So I worked extensively with Farnoosh and Brian. Farnoosh is very organized when it comes to the retro for the release posts. She'll send pings, reminders. She'll say, is there anything that should be verbalized? Should we really have a meeting? Otherwise, she really prefers async. So yeah, I think we could definitely learn from that. Just the pulse, right? Having our finger on that more often, because I think we do have lapses where the team, no one's thinking about retros. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh no, it's retro time. I was going to mention the bubble up topics, Phil, regarding your hardly any issues to bubble up. I think what our plan is to model after the dev department wide, where the DRI who was running that department wide retro would actually look across all of those bubble up topics and derive themes and actually come up with conversational, like discussion topics. And that was supposed to be like the majority of the time spent in the sync session was on those topics. So without the bubble up, you're not really going to get those.
Thanks, Neil. Why don't we move on to topic B, which you have, Seth?
Yeah, this is just more FYI. One of my team members in India had mentioned he's having a hard time getting appointments to get a visa to the United States for Contribute. And then I did a quick search on Slack and I saw that team members in a bunch of countries that require visas are having a hard time getting appointments. So in some cases, they can't get appointments till 2023, which is way after Contribute. So this may create a huge burden for some team members to get to Contribute. When I was searching Slack, I found legal was looking into this, and right now they said there's nothing they can do because the Contribute is classified as a professional conference, which does not qualify for an expedited visa process. So if anyone has team members that may need a visa, definitely have them look into it. For example, in India, people are using browser extensions to just query the embassy's website every day to see if there's appointments that are available. And I would imagine a bunch of other countries are having the same problem.
I had
Already
another
answered my question.
another example similar to that, where someone actually needs to travel to the capital of their country in order to get the visas. They have to travel there, they have to line up, they have to wait for half the day, get the paperwork done, and then travel back home. It's going to cost them 2 days, and it's not worth it for them. So they've decided they won't go to contribute.
Quick Zoom raise of hands. Why don't you emoji tag if you've actually been to contribute before? In person. 1, 2 people. It was prior to me. Maybe 3. What and where was it when you went?
New Orleans.
New Orleans, so in the US.
South Africa.
South Africa. Okay. Ross, which one did you go to?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. When it was in New Orleans, I know it was a different, it was pre-pandemic, of course, but I don't know if that's the reason for the visa challenges more or not. But was that a challenge the last time I was in the US? A lot of people couldn't attend because they couldn't get visas, but wanted to attend but couldn't because they couldn't get a visa in time. Do you remember back then?
I think there was less of that. I think there still was some issues for folks, but I think just the timelines are extended because of COVID, but that's not really my area of expertise.
Yeah, just curious if you remember.
New Orleans in 2019, the company was also a third the size. South Africa was like 300, 400 folks, even smaller then.
Yeah, we have way less people in those areas where it's more complicated to get a visa.
I don't know what South Africa's requirements were back then either. It might have been, it might be more US specific of a challenge, or it might be just international travel is a challenge. Don't know. But thanks for bringing it up, Seth. Olivier, you have a 3A.
Yeah, just reading the notes from last week. I saw that topic being discussed, or wanted to add on it, because I personally experienced delay because of the supply chain. Currently order placed on March 16 and expected to be delivered on June 7 or June 22nd. So, and this is entirely on April delivery date. And apparently it was moved from months further, that maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was planned for May, and now it's June. So it keeps being delayed apparently. And Phil sounds to abound in that way.
Yeah, it seems to be a common problem. And luckily for our engineer, she hasn't had her own personal laptop, and she's happy to keep using that in the interim. Just means keeping their onboarding issue open, because there's a whole lot of sort of compliance steps that you have to follow.
So I asked the same question when I heard about this, or I asked about, is it supply chain, and I heard from a number of my peers that it's not, that it's actually follow up from the IT team on the tickets. So that doesn't mean that both of yours are not supply chain ones, but that, at least the trend from my peers was not supply chain. It was people following up.
When you mean following up on the ticket, because one I have is a link to the Apple website where we can follow the order. So I have the steps, and it's my marked order place, but still in process.
I think it was pre-order or post-order with GitLab, not in the order. So it sounds like, Olivier, yours is by supply chain. The others were, my peers were saying it was primarily that they didn't get a response from IT. So some people have gotten some feedback to IT, so they can be aware of that. So I don't know if that's the challenge that your person has had as well, Phil, or not.
Yeah, this was one that she was purchasing herself. So I think it's just an Apple supply chain issue.
Okay. Yeah. So in 3B, I'm going to make next week an async first week where possible and reasonable. So I'm trying to do this once a month. Please tag, and we're not going to do this meeting next week for that reason. Please tag me. What did I write here? I edited and re-edited. So please tag me where we would have been meeting next week and are going async And there's something that shouldn't wait, like we've done in the past. So happy to, don't wait a week if there's something we need to discuss next week. But if you see me canceling a one-on-one or another meeting and saying I'm doing async, this is why. And I would encourage others to do this periodically as well if they're not already doing it. Others and other teams, if they would like to. That's everything in the agenda. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Cheers.